Good news, I have created a VA disability claim master course with 3 levels. It's going to go basic, intermediate, and advanced. This is going to look at the basic version. Basic meaning everything that veterans should know for themselves when submitting VA disability claims. That's what basic is going to cover. I'm going to have the slide deck in a downloadable format, and it'll be on my website. I'll have all that pinned in the comments. The intermediate course is going to look at the 5 steps. Just 3 of the 5 steps, though: increases, new conditions, and presumptive conditions. The advanced course is going to look at secondaries and denials, along with understanding the M21 TAC 1. And that's going to be the curriculum, the overall objectives of these courses. So without me yapping about nothing, let's go ahead and jump into the basic and course. Here it is. We're going to go through this soup to nuts. I'm also going to chapter this out so you can skip to what you need to look at. So here we go. VA disability compensation basic. This is the website, CIVDIV online. Everything is free. And then we have the YouTube channel plugged below. And of course, the new and improved updated logo. So starting with National Guard and Reserve, Title 10, Title 32. Keep in mind, state active duty is state. It's not federal, all right? But if you are AGR or you're supporting Title 10 orders or you're deployed for whatever reason supporting that federal type mission, you are eligible for VA benefits, not just disability, other VA benefits as well, okay? Now, when to submit your VA disability claims, there are 3 time frames with this, and each time frame has from least to not so good advantages. First one being the benefits delivery at discharge, BDD for active duty service members. This is the most advantageous ever to submit your VA claim. You don't have to worry about the Nexus. You don't have to worry about secondaries. None of that applies to active duty service members. All you need is to have a current diagnosis, either in your records or at the CMP exam. But at a minimum, current diagnosis would be the standard. You could also have documented symptoms or current symptoms at your CMP exam to be awarded service connection. There are many, many other factors with that, but that's the baseline. For those submitting a BDD claim, you need to have a ETS or EAS, so the day you get out of the military. This does not include terminal, so it's your actual last day of the military, between 180 to 90 days. You need to have your service treatment records. That includes any behavioral health records, dental records, and then obviously your medical records, okay? SHA is your separation health assessment, also called final physical or final exam, exit exam. Any of those would suffice. The VA has their own separation health assessment that you can download, okay? And then, of course, you need your DD-214. Now, you're not going to get your DD-214 at 180 days, but once you do have your DD-214 in hand, be sure to upload that to the VA as fast as possible. I would recommend veterans are ready to submit on that 180th day. Bonus points if you can do it, from 180 to 170 would be my goal. Of course, you have all the way till 90 days. The second time frame is 1 year after you get out of the military. Presumptive still exists, and every claim needs a Nexus no matter what, but it's difficult for a CMP examiner. Let's say you've been out for 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, you have a lower back condition. It's difficult for an examiner to say the lower back condition happened in the last, 3, 6, 8 months versus military service. So that 1 year time frame is still advantageous, not as advantageous as a BDD, but pretty darn close. And then the last time frame is everyone else, okay? Myself, the majority of veterans, after that 1 year time frame is any veteran can submit a VA disability claim at any time. This is really going to come into play of in-service events, the current diagnosis, the Nexus, and then that's when we start looking at, generally speaking, that's when we start looking at secondary VA disability claims, and we will cover that in the intermediate and our advanced courses after this. But that is when veterans can submit VA disability claims, right? Best being BDD, second best being within that 1 year time frame. And third best, which is still, it is at the bottom of the poll, but it's still a good time frame, is anytime after. Moving on to the big three, right? What are the requirements for service connection? There's three. These three things are needed for every single claim. Every single claim, right? You have your in-service event, which simply means evidence from service. Medical evidence would be the absolute standard for that. But there's also evidence other than medical. For instance, you never went to medical for your knee pain, but you have 7 deployments with roles and responsibilities of the infantry. Obviously, that evidence there can correlate to your knee pain. Now, believe it or not, everyone has medical evidence, especially newer veterans, because you have your MEPS exam, which is your entrance exam, and then you have your exit exam. And these two alone can be compared and contrasted to each other at a baseline, okay? The second criteria of the big three for service connection, this is not my opinion, this is what the VA is requiring from veterans, is the current diagnosis. Yes, you need a current diagnosis within 1 year. Yes, that diagnosis must be chronic. It must be chronic, okay? But at a minimum, you need documented symptoms, which I wouldn't recommend, but you can submit your claim with documented symptoms that would lead the examiner to give a diagnosis. The reason CP examiners are hesitant to give that diagnosis is because you're not their patient. It's actually not a healthcare exam. It's a legal exam. It's a disability claim, not a healthcare appointment. And so it's a one-time visit. CMP examiners are reluctant and guided not to give diagnosis unless the evidence overtly states that the diagnosis is needed for VA rating purposes. And the third thing, most important, is the Nexus. The Nexus links your current diagnosis to that in-service event, okay? Extremely important. Your in-service event becomes the foundation for the Nexus to be made. Without a current diagnosis, there's no claim. No diagnosis, no claim. So the in-service event and the current diagnosis become the foundation for that Nexus, which is medical. For presumptives, and we'll talk about presumptives here, the VA concedes in the Nexus saying, hey, if you were here and you have this diagnosis, or if you meet this criteria and you have this chronic diagnosis, we will award you service connection. That's the beauty of presumptive conditions. Now, getting a little bit deeper into the big three, starting with the in-service event, extremely important for Guard and Reserve to have that line of duty. Hey, I got hurt. I need this line of duty stating so. Now, not everyone has an official LOD, but any medical evidence stating the condition happened while on orders, on active, whatever that looks like for you in the Guard and the Reserves, this becomes extremely important. I would argue that medical evidence for Guard and Reserve is more important than anything else when it comes to your VA disability claim. Now, there is medical evidence. Okay, we talked about MEPS in your separation health assessment or your final physical or your exit exam. They are the same thing, but there are also annual health assessments and pre and post deployment health assessments. These act as like the golden standard of medical evidence from your service treatment records. If before you went to Afghan, everything was fine, when you came back from Afghan, you were experiencing mental health, you were experiencing migraines, tinnitus, whatever that looks like for you, and you have that complaint in your pre and post deployment health assessments, I would almost bet my entire paycheck that you will be service connected, okay? The health assessments are the golden standard for service connection. That's my opinion. Now, evidence other than medical, again, duties and responsibilities during deployment, your MOS. So you may have never complained about tinnitus, but because you were an artilleryman, you worked on the flight line, whatever that looks like for you, your MOS could be that evidence other than medical. To give you an example of outside the box, I had one veteran ask me about evidence for a military sexual trauma claim, an PTSD due to MST. And the evidence that they used were their Marine Corps fitness reports. Those happen annually, and it's an assessment of how good of a Marine you are and how well you're performing, if at all. And by the time she did not report the event, but when she said the event happened, you could see a drastic change in her performance. Fitness reports go skyrocket all the way down, spiraling down, and that could correlate to the PTSD due to MST, and that is evidence other than medical. So sometimes it's the evidence is right there in your face. Other times you really have to dig deep and think, hey, what evidence do I have that shows cause that this condition came from service? That is evidence other than medical. Current diagnosis within 1 year. This can be from VA healthcare, your private provider, TRICARE Reserve Select, whatever that looks like for you. Okay, just the important thing is make sure the VA has those records, especially for private. Okay, there's two ways to get your private records to the VA. One, give the VA access to your entire private record. I do not recommend that, but there's nothing wrong with it. Or you could just hand pick, cherry pick the evidence, the relevant medical evidence from your private provider to the VA for that claim. Relevant meaning if it's knee pain, the VA doesn't need your blood records, okay? Unless for some reason within your blood test it shows knee pain. I can't think of a scenario for that, but I'm also not a doctor. Take a drink of some coffee here. Okay, the diagnosis must be chronic. If you have asymptomatic or acute, that means diddly squat in the eyes of VA disability. And then there's the conversation of documented symptoms versus chronic diagnosis. Chronic diagnosis is the standard, but at a minimum, you need documented symptoms. And there are some claims where documented symptoms are totally fine. For instance, an IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. If you have complaints, if you've been taking medication, but you haven't had a colonoscopy, that would be okay for VA rating purposes, okay? But still, the standard, the goal is chronic diagnosis. If for some reason you're having trouble being diagnosed by the VA, which is a very, very, very common problem that veterans have, is receiving that diagnosis, because VA healthcare is healthcare focused and they are actually good. A lot of veterans have good experiences with VA healthcare. That's not a bad thing, okay? It would just be nice if the VA, if the VHA side of the house would also give chronic diagnoses with their documented symptoms. Now, in your VA healthcare records, your VAMRs, medical records, you're going to find SCT codes and ICD codes. The SCT is a treatment code, and that would suffice for VA rating purposes. The ICDs are your actual diagnosis. And then, of course, we have the Nexus. The Nexus is the service connection. Without the in-service event, there's no Nexus. Without the current diagnosis, there's no Nexus, okay? There's 5 burdens of proof. The VA really operates in these 3, but every now and then we will see the first and the 5th, okay? So we have not due to and less as likely as not. Less as likely as not. Not due to 0%, that's a no. Less likely is 50%, okay? Then we have at least as likely, that's at 50%, and then more than likely is more than 50%, and then due to the 100%. Yes? Nope, we're good, thank you. I'm not even going to edit that out. In case you're wondering, I'm in a hotel because my house has flooded. Let's keep on rolling. Okay, so Nexus. Then we have presumptive conditions followed by the Nexus, right? This is for a medical Nexus. A presumptive Nexus just means, hey, meet the criteria, have the chronic diagnosis, everything is good to go. The VA is going to concede on that Nexus. So 2 things needed for presumptive service connection: the chronic diagnosis, and then meeting the criteria. That criteria is either time and location based or just time, okay? So for instance, tinnitus and hearing loss have a 1-year presumptive criteria. meaning if you have tinnitus or you have hearing loss and you're within that BDD or that 1 year time frame, you have the chronic diagnosis, you will be service connected, no issues. For PACT Act, it's time location based given the chronic diagnosis. Now we're going to show you an example of Gulf War and post 9/11. This link here, I'll show you what that looks like. VA's presumptive disability benefits. It explains a few things here, but there are prisoners of war. You can see all the disabilities here that are presumptive. It has some other criteria, Vietnam veterans. It has time and location criteria along with all of these conditions. It has atomic veterans with those conditions. And then we have Gulf War post 9/11. It talks about MUCMI, and there's an exhaustive list here. So this goes through the full list. All you need to do is have a chronic diagnosis and meet the time location criteria. Okay, so back to our VA disability claim master course, basic version. And all I did was copy and paste the cancers for Gulf War and post 9/11 and the illnesses for Gulf War post 9/11. Oopsies. But that link here shows you the full list of those presumptives. So if that's you, you're going to want to check that out. Okay. And then there are many other presumptives. This is time location based. There are cancers based on time criteria, diseases, many more like tinnitus and hearing loss within 1 year. Okay, now getting with where and how to start. And this is extremely important. First, as a caveat, I'm only going to cover the most common disabilities that I see in veterans. This is not an all-inclusive list, but this will make you dangerous enough to figure out whatever disability you want, whatever it is you're going to claim. It'll make you dangerous enough to figure out how the VA rates that condition, and knowing the big three in service event, current diagnosis, and the Nexus, you will be prepared to not only submit that claim, but attend your CMP exam and kind of ace that exam, if you will. Okay, so where and how to start. Now this I set up with various links, okay? I'm going to show you a few of these, not all of them. The one-stop shop is going to go to the website, but this is how mental health is rated. 0, 10, 30, 50, 70, and 100. And let's just go ahead and click on the CFR for mental health. And here we are. Now this one is short, but I'm going to show you how to do it anyways. All you need to do is Control F mental, and it'll pop up, hit enter a few times, and boom, you see the general rating formula for mental disorders. And here are your symptoms that correlate to the rating given. Now, mental health is a bit wordy. A lot of the disabilities are very simple and straight to the point. But there's a 38 CFR link there. There's also a DBQ link there, and I want to show you exactly how that looks like. For mental health of note, there's mental disorders. There's a DBQ for eating disorders and another DBQ for PTSD. What we're going to do is just look at the DBQ for mental disorders just to show you that the links do work and it is truly your one-stop shop. Okay, and here we go. Here's the mental health DBQ. It talks about who can complete this form, your evidence, and then all the symptoms. It's essentially a analytical methodology of 38 CFR is how I would describe a DBQ. You have your diagnoses there, and then it goes into the symptoms. This correlates to the percentage that the VA would probably rate. And then all the other symptoms, questions, tons of symptoms here. You get the points. That is the DBQ, but it is your one-stop shop. So if mental health does apply to you, now you know through that slide deck, you have 38 CFR and how the VA rates those conditions, and you have the DBQ to show you exactly what questions and what the VA is looking for during your CMP exam. Now, I am going to show you one more resource, and that is the one-stop shop link, because there's tons of information about mental health that I've already covered. So if you want to look at what does 70% symptoms look like, and you are more of a visual learner like myself, here's a YouTube video going over mental health symptoms of 70%, what it could look like. Here's mental health CMP exam, mental health secondary claims. I mean, all the information you could want. This goes to the subreddit of veterans benefits. just to show you a more digestible version of 38 CFR. This is your one-stop shop, and that one-stop shop link is going to be on all of these slides for the various sections of your body. So for instance, I'll show you migraines. Here we go. Okay, you'll see you'll see some information on migraines there. If you are that visual learner, here's ear conditions. And then the last one I'll show you is shoulders and arms. Okay, talks about how does the VA rate shoulder conditions, elbows and forearms, and then the wrist. And we have that for all of these body systems that we are about to go over. So that's mental health, and that is how this section is laid out. I'm not going to do that for all of these slides, but it's the same exact way to click on the link. Here's migraines rated from 0 to 50. Then you have TBI and neurological 38 CFR DBQs. Then, of course, the one-stop shop there. Now, looking at TBI specifically, you can have a separate rating for TBI. Generally, we see that roped together, pyramided under mental health, especially at 70% and above, as there's a lot of overlap there. But it is possible to have mental health like PTSD at 50% and TBI at 10%, okay? Totally possible, just depends on your symptoms. The VA rates symptoms, not the diagnosis. Always remember that. Here's ear conditions: tinnitus, hearing loss, vertigo, Meniere's. Are there other ear conditions? Absolutely. These are just the most common. If you click on 38 CFR link and you have another ear condition, if you just control F that ear condition, you are going to find the disability in 38 CFR because the ears are all in the same section of 38 CFR. Same thing with all this other stuff. Okay. Here's respiratory and nose conditions: sinusitis, rhinitis, asthma, sleep apnea. There's a DBQs for those in the 38 CFR reference. And of course, that one-stop shop link. Here's how the neck and back are rated. Now, generally speaking, it's going to be range of motion for your appendages and joints. The neck and back, or your lumbar, thoracolumbar, and cervical spines, are on 2 different rating scales. The overwhelming majority of veterans are rated under range of motion, like bending forward, bending backwards. Okay, that's for any joint or appendage. Your back rotating, kind of like a hula hoop. How well can you move? And it'll be measured. But there's also incapacitating episodes, like if you're prescribed bed rest for whatever reason because of your back or your neck. You could be rated under that schedule ratings. There are some connotations there in the M21, which we will cover in our advanced course. Simply range of motion, radiculopathy, incapacitating episodes, no radiculopathy. Okay, things like that. And the VA will take the highest of the ratings. And again, the overwhelming majority is going to be range of motion. Now, again, covered in the advanced course are going to be your secondary disabilities. We're really looking at, I said radiculopathy, nerve damage or sciatic nerve damage in your lumbar spine. And there can also be nerve damage from your neck and each arm. Side note, as far as nerve damage goes for your arms, you can only have 1 per, so a total of 2. For your back, you can have 5, okay, a total of 5. So like radiculopathy left, right, and femoral left, right. You could be rated for all of those all at the same time. Then we have arm conditions: shoulders, elbows, forearms. VA rates those in the same CFR, and your wrists. And here are the DBQs for those. Generally speaking, you're going to see about 10-20% for all of these. It's not common to see a very high rating for elbows and forearms or your wrist. I would say it's more common to see 40% ratings for your shoulders versus the others. Okay. Also, secondaries are covered in the advanced course. Nerve damage like carpal tunnel or cubital nerve can be service connected from these disabilities. Very, very easy type of claim to do. Okay, leg conditions: hip and thigh. And then we have that sciatic nerve, the radiculopathy, right? Whether we're talking about paralysis, neuralgia, wherever that looks like for you. And we have the diagnostic code there of 8520. Knee and ankle conditions. Here's how the VA rates knees, shin splints, and the ankles. And again, 38 CFR DBQ references. And then we have one-stop shop from the CIVDivonline.com website. Side note, For surgeries, okay, there is possibility that veterans can be awarded a temporary 100%. For instance, if you have knee surgery, you can be awarded 100% up to 4 months, and then that can be extended depending on your condition and what that recovery looks like. Then we have foot conditions, flat feet, plantar fasciitis, and other foot injuries. There are a lot of more foot conditions, all covered in 38 CFR and this DBQ. And side note, in the advanced course, we're going to cover M21 TAC 1. For instance, you can only have one rating for flat feet and plantar fasciitis. One rating. That's it. VA policy dictates one. So if you have a flat foot rating at 50%, the VA is going to take the highest of the flat feet and plantars. If you have flat feet at 10 and plantar fasciitis at 30 or 20, the VA will take the plantar fasciitis. There's nothing that you need to do about that. It's automatic in the background. Then we have hypertension, how hypertension is rated. 38 CFR DBQ references here. And then we have presumptive secondaries from hypertension, like hardening of the kidney, heart attack, and stroke. Lots of DIC benefits, implications there with that. Now, side note, we do see 60% for hypertension. By far, the most common rating for hypertension is 0%. In 38 CFR, you'll see medication for 0 and 10%, which is definitely going to play a factor. Then we have gastrointestinal conditions. I went ahead and it is not May 19th yet. I went ahead and just acted as if it was. And so these links will, hopefully the link stays the same. If not, I'll make an update. When GERD, IBS changes come down the line, it should be the same. And there are the DBQs. And these are now, GERD and IBS are now rated separately, okay, after May 19th. So it could be good, could be bad. I think GERD is bad. I think IBS is good. I think those with both will have to make a decision as to how it affects you. That's where to start. Now, here is actually submitting your VA claim. What does that actually look like? So now that we understand what it is we want to claim, the next step is submitting that claim, okay? Starting with VSOs, Veteran Service Organization, Veteran Service Officer, an organization like a VSO rep is going to be your VFW, your DAV, Wounded Warrior, American Legion. There are many more. Then you have VS officers at the county. Now, when it comes to accreditation, right, VFW has an accreditation. So VFW accredits a lot of the state county VSOs. That does not matter to you at all, with the exception of if your county VSO has a VFW accreditation, it's easier to shop around VSOs within that same accreditation if you want to stay within that same organization. If not, let's say you talk to a VFW rep for whatever reason, you walk next door to the DAV and you choose to work with them, that is A-okay. All you have to do is fill out a power of attorney and the VA will flip-flop the accreditation for you. It's background noise. You don't have to do anything except sign the POA, and the VSO is going to take care of all of that. Here are some things that you need to do before meeting with your VSO. If you do not understand what you're going to claim and you walk into your VSO's room and you have that meeting, you say, hey man or gal, can you help me do my VA claim? They say, yeah, what do you want to claim? You say, I don't know. I thought you were supposed to tell me that. That's not how it works, okay? You, veteran, this is going to be a newsflash. You have to take responsibility for your claim. No one's going to tell you that you have trouble with mental health, okay? The VSO is not going to comb 3,000 pages of your medical records and make sure you hit everything. You have to do some due diligence saying, this is wrong with me. It came from service. Here's what I want to claim. And that's what the first section was all about, okay? So understand what conditions you want to claim. Understand what evidence you have or what evidence you don't have of that claim. Evidence meaning both medical and evidence other than medical, saying, hey, I think I suffer from PTSD. You know, I'm irritable. I get angry a lot. I punch holes in my house whenever my wife and I argue, whatever that looks like for you. However, I've never complained about mental health before. Then with that information, Now your VSO can say, hey, pretty common to not see medical evidence for PTSD or behavioral health records for that, but you do have XYZ, you do have deployment, you do have combat action ribbon, you do have the CIB or the CAB, whatever that looks like for you. The VSO can then, with the information you provided them, begin to massage that and structure that claim as needed. That is how the meeting between a veteran and a VSO goes. It's not, hey, VSO, do everything for me. I'll see you back in 3 months. It's not going to work like that, okay? And how do you find your VSO? This link right here, if you click on the link, it's going to bring you to the accreditation site, and you can look up a VSO reps, both organization and officer. You can look up attorneys and claims agents through this link to figure out what VSO is near you. The VFW also has a search engine for VSOs near you. Okay. Question. Do you need your service treatment records on you to submit your claim? I'll give you 5 seconds to answer that. Okay. The answer is no, you do not. Is it advantageous to have your service treatment record so that way you can actually see your exit exam and your health assessments and all the other complaints you have? Sure, but you don't need them on you to submit that claim. The VA is going to get them anyways, even if you submit it with your claim. Doesn't matter. The VA is going to get those records. So no, you do not. Now, this document that I am going to pull up here is extremely important. Okay, I made this. It is kind of a dummy version of understanding the big three and what it is that you want to claim. Meaning, if you take this form to your VSO, they're going to understand exactly what it is you want to claim. Let's go ahead and pull this up. Okay, I'll take my face out of this so that way you can see the nuts and potatoes here. But here I have just the common disabilities. Okay. I left space below so you can add whatever it is that you want. But as you can see, let's go ahead and zoom in here. But as you can see, we have the big three lined out, the in-service event. So let's say you have migraines. And you say, hey, I do have a complaint of migraines. In your service treatment records, you can go ahead and put an X there. Or you don't have a complaint of migraines, but you have, you were near an explosion, you worked with C4, whatever that looks like for you, you could put an X in this column here. Now you look at your current diagnosis. Hey, have I complained to the VHA about my migraines? Was it private? Whatever that looks like for you, then you would put an X in here. Now, we will talk about this, and this is definitely going to fall into the advanced course here. I'll give you a snippet on it, but at a minimum, veterans need, okay, not an opinion. They need to submit an in-service event and the current diagnosis with your claim. Now, moving on to some notes. I put some notes down here because I know people are going to have some questions, which is A-okay. We have the requirements for service connection, the big three, definitions of the big three. Okay, this is a basic Barney style. Now, the Nexus. Let's talk about the Nexus. The Nexus is to be given by the C&P examiner. Now, veterans have the option to submit an independent medical opinion in a private DBQ, which is IMO and DBQ here, with their initial claim. Me, personally, this is totally my opinion, I only recommend to consider, not get one, to consider IMOs and DBQs in the appeals process or for some secondary VA claims. The advanced course is going to dig a lot deeper into that. Now, can you submit that with your initial claim? You absolutely can. Do I recommend it? No. Do whatever you want. If you have money coming out the wazoo and you can afford the medical opinion and you have zero issues doing that, then go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to. I'm just saying I don't recommend it. But in my opinion, IMOs and DBQs are strong evidence during the appeals process and for some secondary VA claims, right? Like depression secondary to mental health would at least prompt me to consider an independent medical opinion. Now, just for giggles, look at that beautiful new and improved logo there. Okay, Now, this is also going to be downloadable, and you can see that on the slide deck as well as the website. And there's the downloadable link right there. Okay. Now, submitting your claim without a VSO, I understand some veterans want to do this. I highly recommend using a accredited VSO. And here's my picture perfect scenario. A veteran walks in with that worksheet. They have their in-service events, their current diagnosis, and they say, hey, here's what I want to submit. Bada bing, bada boom, and use the VSO as a submission middleman, if you will, instead of taking control of your entire claim. I believe veterans have the know-how to understand the VA disability process as it pertains to their claims, not the whole process, just as it pertains to them. But sure, can you submit your claim by yourself? You absolutely can through va.gov. It's actually super easy online. You can also do paper version. I put analog there. But the 526EZ, the 95s and 96s, you can submit those via mail if you want. Online is the way to go because it will choose what forms you need to complete. It'll do it for you. Okay. I also have how-to tutorials on this link showing you exactly how to submit your own claim if for whatever reason you are set on not using a VSO. And again, I highly recommend using that accredited VSO. And now we are getting to compensation and pension exams or C&P exams. My coffee is over here getting cold. Okay, C&P examiners, roles and responsibilities. Here's what they do, okay? C&P examiner reviews evidence sent from the VBA. Now, we can talk about OIG reports. That's a whole other topic, okay? It's not looking good, FYI. Number 2 is examine the veteran to confirm or establish the diagnosis. When it comes to establishing that diagnosis, remember, it's not a healthcare exam. It's a legal exam. C&P examiners are very reluctant, right, or guarded to give that diagnosis, but they will if you have the symptoms that would lead them to make the diagnosis for VA rating purposes, not healthcare purposes. The C&P examiner also examines the veteran to determine severity of symptoms. That is going to be done through the DBQ. That's what the DBQ is for. It looks at the diagnosis, it looks at the severity of symptoms, and then they report those findings to the VBA, and that is usually within 30 days. That's what C&P examiners do, okay? Now, what we're really going to do is talk about how veterans speak to a C&P examiner, because this is what matters to you. How do you speak to a C&P examiner? And the only thing that matters is the big 3. That's it. In-service event, current diagnosis, and that Nexus. And a side note here, be honest, be vulnerable, especially if we're talking about mental health here. Don't hold back. At the same time, don't exaggerate. Okay, it all goes back to just being truthful. Be honest, be vulnerable. That's how you speak to a C&P examiner. I'm going to give you a scenario and a question so you can make that determination. So which is best? Okay, here's scenario A. C&P examiner says, tell me about your migraines. You're the veteran in that office, and you say, I'm just going to read this out loud. You say, my migraines began in 2012 after my deployment to wherever. I complained about my migraine once during a post-deployment health assessment. Since then, I've taken over-the-counter medication and left the military in 2019. In 2019, I complained about migraines to my primary care and was prescribed this medication. I get migraines about, YZ times per month, and I experience symptoms B, C, D. Each time I have a migraine, I am sure to take my medication. I have refilled my prescriptions, amount of refills. That's A. Here's scenario B. Okay. Tell me about your migraines. My migraines occurred this times amount of per month, and they really affect my entire life. My migraines are completely prostrating, and when I get a migraine, I experience symptom A, B, C. My partner has seen my migraines multiple times, and they wrote a buddy letter about my migraines. I am taking Tylenol for my migraines, and I complained to my primary care at the VA about my migraines multiple times. So of A and B, Which do you think is best? Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds to answer this one. Boop, boop. Okay, the answer is A. A is the answer, okay? A is the answer. I'm going to tell you why. I broke it down into the big three. The Nexus is not present because the C&P examiner is going to make the Nexus. But you can see in scenario A, we speak on the in-service event. And everything the veteran is speaking about, there's evidence for. So it's one thing to make a self-report and a testimony. It's another thing if that self-report supports the medical evidence. That's a whole new ballgame. Then we have the current diagnosis, which is current symptoms and the diagnosis given the prescription medication, okay? And then we also have symptom severity, talking about, hey, we need the medication this amount of times per month, leading to what does prostration actually mean. In the advanced course, we cover migraines and the word prostrating. It is a VA adjudication thing, not a healthcare thing. You're not going to see prostration in the healthcare world. Food for thought. Okay, now we have decision letters. So depending on whether you're approved or denied, here's the next step in decision letters. So approved for service connection. This is exactly what it's going to look like. Service connection for carpal tunnel syndrome, left upper extremity is granted with an evaluation of 10%. Okay, let's go ahead and check this out. Going down to that carpal tunnel, you'll see the effective date. That is for back pay. So you will be back paid to June 11th. The VA pays in arrears, so it's really going to be July. All right, had to do some month math there. All right, an evaluation of 10% is given. When you are awarded, the VA tells you the higher evaluation and why you did not rate a 20%. In this case, 20% is not warranted for paralysis of the median nerve unless the evidence shows nerve damage is moderate. Meaning, if I have moderate nerve damage in my notes or my healthcare records, I now know to do a higher level review because I should have been awarded 20%. If I don't, and I think I have it, then I need to go talk to my healthcare provider about this. Or if I'm properly rated at 10%, everything's good to go. That's what it looks like for being approved. Here's what it looks like for being denied, okay? Service connection for IBS is denied, irritable bowel syndrome. On the denial, you're going to see this section called favorable findings. This is crucial. In the advanced course, we look at the rationale above from the C&P examiner. For right now, we're going to look at the favorable findings because this is what matters. Now, there's 4 different favorable findings, okay? You have been diagnosed with a disability. The examination on that date confirms the diagnosis. Of the big 3, it'll be in here. Either the in-service event or the current diagnosis. In this instance, we see the current diagnosis. Boom, we have the current diagnosis. We're lacking in the in-service event world. But you also see the TERA, target exposure risk activity. That could serve as the in-service event. IBS deals with the MUCMI as undiagnosed. We're not going to go there right now. That's, again, going to be in the advanced course, okay? So there's potential here. But if you had the in-service event in plain language, it would say something like your medical records from service or your service treatment records did show complaints of the claimed condition, right? So that's what that would look like. And then if you submit a secondary claim, let's say you did IBS secondary to PTSD, another favorable finding would say, hey, your PTSD is service connected. The primary disability has been service connected, but you're still denied. So that's favorable findings. Now the question is, what do you do about it? So we have the appeals here. The higher level review, okay, HLRs can only review the original evidence that was evidence reviewed to make the decision of your claim. Okay, HLRs are only good for 1 year. That's it. HLRs are only good for one year, and HLRs can review the service connection, the effective date, or the rating awarded. So for instance, in the approval here, if you did rate 20% because your paralysis shows moderate in your records, for whatever reason, the C&P examiner didn't agree, you would do a higher level review because the VA cannot ignore medical evidence. That's why submitting evidence with your claim is crucial. Okay, it's for the higher level reviews. Generally speaking, you'll see HLRs be successful for these two. Not so much for service connection, and we're going to cover that in the advanced course as well. Okay, now my recommendation for HLR is personally the informal conference. Is that going to make your HLR take a little longer? The answer is yes. The VA tells us that on their website, but I would much rather speak to a rater versus write them a personal statement. Okay, that's just me. Do you have to do an informal conference? Absolutely not. You could write a personal statement with your HLR. That's all fine. You cannot submit new evidence outside the personal statement. Okay. Now, when you do submit that HLR with the informal conference, assuming that's the route you go, you need to be prepared to understand and articulate your evidence. Evidence meaning the big three. They're going to call you on your phone. It's informal, like how my mom would call me. Hey, man, what's up? Okay. I would say, oh, nothing much. The VA would say, hey, talk to me about this claim. You need to be prepared to speak on your in-service event. Hey, I did have medical evidence from service, or I don't have medical evidence, but evidence other than medical XYZ. Okay. Then you move on to the current diagnosis. Exactly how you would speak to a C&P examiner is how you speak to the VA rater, and they only care about this. The VA only cares about the big three. Don't call them or don't answer the phone talking about how bad your life sucks or how bad the VA sucks. Although both those might be true, no one cares. Okay, that's the fact of the matter. What matters is the big three. Now you have another option. You have two other options for appeals. You have the supplemental appeal. This allows the veteran to submit new and relevant evidence. New meaning the VA didn't have it before. Relevant meaning it combats the reason for your denial. Supplementals you'll really see shine for service connection. And then the rating being awarded if it's within that 1 year and you need to submit new and relevant evidence. Okay. After that 1 year time frame goes, the rating being awarded is gone. At that point, it becomes an increase. In this case, within 1 year preserves the effective date, but supplementals will really shine for service connection. And that's where supplemental appeals are for. Okay. Now you have recommendations for supplemental. It absolutely depends. There's no cookie cutter answer at all. So I went ahead and cut it into 3 possible options, but there are more. If you're denied for the in-service event, you got 2 options. 1, you either comb through your service treatment records and find that medical evidence. Hey, VA, you missed my in-service event. It's right here. Yes, that does happen quite often. Okay. Or option 2, you really think about that evidence other than medical. Like the example I gave earlier with the PTSD due to MST claim, that veteran used their Marine Corps fitness reports to show spiraling down performance in their fit reps as evidence other than medical. Think personnel records, safety reports. It could be buddy letters, lay statements, personal statements, any of those. If you're denied for the current diagnosis, this one's pretty simple. Get the dang diagnosis, okay? Veterans do not need to be submitting claims without a current diagnosis or at a minimum documented symptoms. There is no excuse. Seriously. Then we have the denied for Nexus. If you have both of these, but for whatever reason, the VA denied you for the Nexus, you'll see this commonly in secondary claims, okay? Because in secondaries, there's no need for the in-service events. That becomes your primary disability. You still need the current diagnosis. The Nexus then for secondaries connects the current diagnosis to the primary. That's what a secondary claim is. This one's not simple, and this is when I would start to at least consider sufficient private IMOs and DBQs. The reason I put the word sufficient up there is because are there those that submit or write and submit baloney medical opinions and DBQs? Absolutely. If you're going to pay, you'll want a good one. Okay. Top dog. Again, that's going to be in the advanced course. Then you have the Board of Appeals, and this is our last slide. I highly recommend obtaining a lawyer, okay, a representative for this when it comes to the Board of Appeals. But veterans can choose to present arguments to a judge over a hearing or not. Same concept as an informal conference or not. Same thing, just with the judge, okay? I am of the opinion to request the hearing. That's me personally. You have the Form 10182. You might hear of a Form 9. Those don't even matter anymore. Now, veterans can submit new and relevant evidence with their appeal, for sure. So kind of like a supplemental claim, same concept there. And again, I highly recommend seeking representative from that accredited attorney or agent. There are a few attorneys that I would recommend. Victory Disability would be one of them, especially if you're considering Social Security disability. And that's it, okay? Side note here, time, the Board of Appeals is probably going to take a while. Now, this is the VA Disability Compensation Basic course. VA Disability Claim Master course. We'll just go ahead and update this right now live. VA Disability Claim Master course Basic. There is going to be an intermediate and advanced version. Again, the intermediate is going to look at increases, new conditions, and pact or presumptive related conditions. So veterans not just helping themselves. Intermediate is a veteran helping someone else, okay? Obviously, the same techniques in intermediate you can use for yourself as well. The advanced is really going to get into secondaries and denials and some M21 trash.